Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Tianon and in today's video I'm going to be reflecting on my reading from 2021 and I'll also be sharing my goals for 2022 with you as well. I've decided to group all of these into one video, mainly because I had a pretty average reading year last year. When I went to sit down to kind of plan out all the books I wanted to talk about in my favourites video and the worst books of 2021 video, I quickly realised that I didn't have any that really stood out to me, and I didn't feel like I could post two separate in-depth videos on the favourites and least favourite books because I just didn't have that many and it would be pretty pointless. So I have decided to group everything into one to hopefully make it a bit easier, but I will leave timestamps throughout this video, so if you just want to know a little bit about my reading stats, I will be talking about them first. Then I'm going to move on to my favourite and least favourite books of last year, and then I'm going to be talking about my goals for 2022. So I will have all the timestamps in the description, and of course it will be available on the video as well, but that is essentially why I've decided to just film the one video. I'm going to start off this video talking about my stats for last year. This is again going to be a very short section because I didn't really track a lot of my reading last year. I wanted to put a lot less pressure on myself. I wanted to read for fun rather than to try and read critically, and as much as I enjoyed that, I do miss having my reading stats, so I think I'm going to concentrate more on doing that this year. But last year I read 61 books. Now my Goodreads goal was 52, mainly because there are 52 weeks in a year and I thought if I can at least read one book per week I will be happy. As you can see, I've surpassed that, but it is a lot less than the amount of books I read in 2020. I think I read 108 books in 2020, which is crazy, but I do have to factor in that I was on furlough for like 3 months, so I obviously had time off not really doing anything to read, and as I've gotten busier, as I've started my new teaching job, I do have less time to sit down and prioritise reading. So I'm very happy that I managed to read 61 books. Not gonna lie though, it does irritate me a little bit that that's not an even number. Is that the same for anyone else? Please do let me know, but yeah, I don't like the fact that it's odd. So this year I'm definitely gonna make sure that it's an even number. But yes, I did read 61 books and the total number of pages that I read was 22,974. So not a bad reading year at all in terms of the number of books read, but as I mentioned, the books that I read were unfortunately nothing too special. I did have a few favourites which obviously I'll talk about now, but I am hoping that this year I can focus more on books that I really will love and that will give me that 5-star feeling. Unfortunately, those are the only stats that I can give you today because as I've mentioned, I wasn't really tracking anything last year, but I am planning to go back to the more critical route of reading, which I will talk about in my goals section, I guess. As you guys can see, Kiwi has decided to join me. I think it's because I have a hot water bottle here because I'm freezing. So if she does make some noise, please do ignore her. I think I am just going to move on straight into my favourite books of last year. These are all unexpected ones for me because they are outside of my comfort zone in one way or another. But the first book I'm going to talk about is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I do have a dedicated reading vlog of me reading this book. It is a booktuber recommends video and it was recommended to me by Rebecca from Rebecca and the Books, and this is a story all about William Shakespeare's son Hamnet. This is definitely not a book that I would typically read, however Rebecca was recommending it so highly and it's a book that's also had so much praise that I decided to buy it and give it a go. This edition of the book is also a Waterstones exclusive edition and I had to snatch it up as it's just stunning, but this was such an interesting novel. It was also extremely heartbreaking. It deals with William Shakespeare's life, his children's lives, his wife's life. It talks about their past, their history, how he came to be the famous playwright that he is, and it's such a beautifully written, moving story that I would highly recommend that everyone read. And yeah, it just has a little note here that says Hamnet is a novel inspired by the son of a famous playwright. It's the story of the bond between twins and of marriage pushed to the brink by grief. It's also the story of a kestrel and its mistress, a flea that boards a ship in Alexandria, and a glovemaker's son who flouts convention in pursuit of the woman he loves. Above all, it's the tender reimagining of a boy whose life has been all but forgotten but whose name was given to one of the most celebrated plays ever written. I do want to mention as well that this book definitely reads as if it's a magical realism story every now and again. There are just certain descriptions and imagery in this book that pushes the boundary almost between a historical fiction novel and a magical realism novel, and I just love that so much. If you don't know as well, I do love my history and this was all in all just a perfect book for me. I really do want to reread it and also read more from Maggie O'Farrell herself. And I'm going to stop talking about this now, but just know that once again I highly recommend it and it definitely deserves all the praise that it's getting. Next up is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a sci-fi fantasy paranormal middle grade that I absolutely loved. In this book we follow our main character Amari, and at the start of this novel we learn that her brother Quentin has gone missing. No one's really talking about his disappearance though, but his mysterious job does hold a clue. So when Amari is invited to the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, Amari is convinced that this is the way that she will find out what happened to her brother and possibly save him. However, in order to become part of this Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, Amari must compete in some magical trials. Not only does she not have any magic, but she's also going to be up against kids that have been immersed in this world their whole lives. And to top it all off, there is an evil magician in this world as well that is trying to bring down this bureau. So we have a lot of stuff going on here, and Amari essentially needs to fight harder than anyone else and fighter than she's personally ever fought before. This was such a powerful story. It does highlight racism a lot through this book, as Amari is a black character in a predominantly white setting. I personally cannot speak on the representation, but from what I read and from what I've seen from Own Voices reviewers, this is an amazing portrayal of a young black woman in a white society. This does also focus a lot on friendship, which I loved. It's a book about triumphing when the odds are against you, and it's just all round a very powerful read, but a brilliant read as well. So once again, I would highly recommend this. Please don't let the fact that it's a middle grade put you off. If anything, it just makes the story even more magical, and it is definitely worth your time. Right, I'm really sorry if the lighting has changed, which it definitely has because my battery died and it's suddenly gone really dark outside as well, so I'm really sorry about that. But the next favourite that I wanted to mention in this video is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This was such a massive surprise for me. I picked it up completely on a whim. I normally associate Colleen Hoover with fluffy contemporary type of stories, and this was definitely not that. This was a very dark, twisted thriller, and I honestly had the best time reading it. Not gonna lie though, it is very disturbing. There are things that are mentioned in this book that are definitely not for the faint of heart. It does all come together and make sense at the end, which is why I thought it was so brilliant, but until you get to the end, everything that's been mentioned previously, it's still disgusting, but there is kind of a reason for it. So just be aware of that going in. There are definitely a lot of triggers for this book, which I will hopefully find a post for and link down below. I read this book on my Kindle. I don't own a physical copy, even though I would love to, so I can't just go and check for you unfortunately, but I will try my best to have some triggers leave linked down below. But essentially that book blew me away, blew all my expectations out the water. I was hooked. I could not stop reading. It is a story about an author who has had an accident and is essentially in a coma, but the thing is, this author's works are so popular that they do want someone else to come in and finish off her series. That is where our main character comes in. Honestly though, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, so I'm really sorry, but she decides that she is going to finish out this series, and because of that she moves into the family home with Verity, who is the author, and her husband and their child. Once she gets there though, she discovers a manuscript written by Verity, and it mentions a lot of dark things, including the fact that one of their daughter's deaths might not have been an accident. That is all I'm gonna say. I don't want to say any more because I feel like you will get the best experience reading this without really knowing anything. I know that I did. I would really love to read it again, even though I do know what goes on and how it ends, but it's just such an amazing fast-paced thriller. It's quite a short read as well, and I remember wanting to go to bed, but as soon as I finished one chapter I had to read the next one because they all finish on some sort of cliffhanger, or they give you little hints of information that just kind of blow your mind, so it does make you carry on until you finish it, and I love that in a book. So definitely a favourite of mine. It is one that is going to stick with me for a long time, and I'm just really glad that I read it. And then the last favourite that I'm going to mention is actually a trilogy, but I will just show you the first book, and that is the Tawny Man trilogy, starting with The Fool's Errand. This is the third trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, and you guys probably know by now that Robin Hobb is an all-time favourite author of mine. I have loved every single one of her books that I've read so far, and this trilogy was no different. I fell in love with these books even more because we do go back and follow some familiar characters. We see even more relationships develop. Of course, a Robin Hobb book has loads of political intrigue. We have a lot of court politics where people essentially stab each other in the backs constantly, and it's so interesting to see how that game is sort of played between all of our different characters. We do also follow some new characters in here which were mentioned or we've seen briefly in the first trilogy, but we get more of an in-depth look at them here, and I just love Robin Hobb's books so much. I'm not going to tell you anything about this trilogy in particular because it would definitely spoil the first trilogy, but in the first book, in the Realm of the Elderling series, we have Assassin's Apprentice, and in that one we follow Fitz Chivalry Farseer, who when he's around 6 years old, I believe, his grandfather drops him off at the gates of the keep. He essentially says he doesn't want the boy anymore because he is the bastard son of the prince, and therefore the prince should take care of him because his family is poor and cannot support this boy. Fitz is then taken into the palace, but because he is a bastard, he is not given any sort of privilege. If anything, his life is a bit rubbish, but he does get taken in by the stable master Burrick and is brought up by him in the stables. As I've previously mentioned, there are a lot of politics in Robin Hobb's books, and because of this, King Shrewd, who is also Fitz's grandfather, approaches him and trains him to become an assassin, because even though he is not technically considered royalty because of his bastard status, he is still related to the king, and so he is in a very peculiar position where on one hand he's a commoner, but on the other hand he is royalty. So King Shrewd decides to use that to his advantage and trains Fitz to become an assassin. That is all I'm going to say on that one as well. I feel like I told you quite a lot in there anyway, but again, I don't want to spoil it. I definitely think you just need to dive into that first book without really knowing anything. I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook as well, especially whilst reading the first book, because it did take me quite a while to get into that, but once I did, it was so easy to fly through, and I'm 11 books in now. I want to say I've read 11 Robin Hobb books, which is crazy, but I love every single one. Cannot wait to read the rest of her books, and yeah, if you haven't read any of the books in this series yet, please do. I couldn't recommend them enough. Right, moving on to the more sour notes of this video, I have my worst books of 2021. I am going to start this one off by mentioning Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. I do have a physical copy somewhere, but I've just filmed an unhaul and I can't find it, so I will have a picture on screen. This is described as a YA horror, however it wasn't scary in the slightest. Nothing really happened in it. I didn't feel like the story made sense, and I also didn't think that it was high stakes. So essentially I didn't care for the characters, didn't really care for the story or the plot, and the ending was a massive letdown for me. So I did end up giving this one 2 stars. I could have possibly given it a lower rating as well, but I'm not that harsh. It was okay, but from the synopsis I was expecting to be scared out of my mind, and I wasn't in the slightest. So unfortunately that was one of my least favourite books of the year, and I have since unhauled it. The next book I have is Even the Darkest Stars by Heather Fawcett. I was so excited to dive into this one. I felt like it would be a book that I loved, but unfortunately I really didn't. I think this is another one that I gave 2 stars, and I love the concept and the world. However, this had a massive case of insta-love, which really threw me off. You guys know I'm not really a romance reader. I don't particularly care for romance unless that there's a romance between characters that I'm really familiar with and invested in, but this was just out of the blue, completely not relevant to the story. It didn't really help the story in any way or move the story along, and this is essentially a survival story. It is set in a fantasy world and we do have fantastical creatures in here, but the characters in this novel need to journey to the most perilous mountain, and I have to double check because I've honestly wiped this from my mind now, but a famous explorer called Rivashara comes to our main character's village, and he is in search of a magical talisman. This talisman though is rumoured to be in one of the tallest and deadliest mountain in the Arias, and it says here, the challenges of climbing Raksha are unlike anything Kamsin expected or prepared for, with avalanches, ice chasms, ghosts and other dangers at every turn, and as dark secrets are revealed, Kamsin must unravel the truth about their mission and her companions while surviving the deadliest climb she has ever faced. That sounds like this is going to be high stakes, full of tension, full of twists and turns, and it really wasn't. This was so convenient for the characters, considering that they're climbing the deadliest mountain in this world. They did it really easily, essentially. Spoilers. No, but I mean, it's really not even funny. They would get caught in a situation and one of the characters would just kind of be like, oh, we should do this, and then they're out of it and the danger has passed and they just move on. And that would be fine if it happened once, but it happens constantly throughout this book, and I just couldn't vibe with that. I thought it was so stupid, and this is another one that I'm gonna unhaul. And I do think I have saved the worst till last for you guys. I think that my worst book of 2021 is Stealing Snow by Danielle Page. Once again, this is a book I thought I was going to absolutely love. It's a retelling of The Snow Queen, which instantly had me intrigued, but as you can tell, this was a massive letdown for me. So as I've said a minute ago, I'm not the biggest fan of romance, and I really don't like cliche romance tropes such as insta love and love triangles. This book doesn't have a love triangle, guys. This book has a love square. Honestly, right? This main character falls in love with every single boy that she meets in this world. It is ridiculous. So already I was rolling my eyes, but I thought, you know what, carry on with it, it might get better. But it didn't. This, once again, is so convenient, and it really irritates me. So say, for example, our characters are in the middle of a battle. We will have a page describing what's going on, how they're all fighting, this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden, we're in a new chapter in a new place. There is no information about what went on in the battle after that. There is no resolution from that. Some characters are just missing and they're not referred to, and it just really confused me, and I really don't get that as a form of writing at all. I was just not with it by that point. I was getting really angry. I wanted to know what had happened to these characters, and I just couldn't believe it. So unfortunately, the majority of things about this book just didn't work for me. And even though I am kind of slating these books, I do just want to say, if you enjoy these books, that's completely fine, though they're just not to my taste, and they do have elements that I just really don't like. So it's all personal preference. Unfortunately, this just didn't do it for me at all, and I will not miss this book once I unhaul it. Please do let me know actually what your favourite and least favourite books of 2021 were down in the comments. I'm very nosy and I would love to know. But I do think it's time to move on to the last section of this video, which is my 2022 goals. My first goal is a rather ambitious one, and that is my Goodreads goal. And for 2022, I have set my Goodreads goal at 100 books. Now, I genuinely don't really know why I've done this, because as I mentioned earlier, I only managed to read 61 books in 2021, and I'm definitely gravitating towards the chunkier, more dense adult fantasy books at the minute, so I'm not sure how achievable that is, but I am going to start the year off with that goal in mind, because I would really love to hit that. Don't get me wrong, if I start to struggle, if I feel like this goal is unachievable or that it's stressing me out, I will just lower it. That is not an issue. I'm not too focused on the Goodreads goal, but I do like to have it in place because it lets me know if I'm on track or if I should be trying to read a little bit more. Carrying on from what I just said, the next goal I have is to put less pressure on myself in terms of my reading and also my content creating. For me, reading is a hobby, booktube is a hobby. I feel like sometimes it gets to the point where I just feel so stressed out and I don't want to film anymore, which is definitely pressure that I put on myself. I feel like I have this standard that I need to hit every single time. As we've learned from this pandemic, mental health is such an important thing, and sometimes you really do need to take time out for yourself. So if I can't hit my 100 books goal, that is completely fine. If I don't post a video one week, that is completely fine too. I'm not going to police myself when it comes to reading and content creating, because it takes so much time, you guys, and it's so hard to fall into the trap of not feeling good enough. So I think for me this year, I just want to take things as they come. So at the minute, I am loving creating content. All I want to do is film, edit, post videos, but maybe in 2-3 months time I will have a lot more going on and I won't be wanting to make content, and that is completely fine. So essentially, I just want to put less pressure on myself. I do want to keep to some sort of schedule, though I'm not setting that in stone because once again, I don't want that pressure, but I feel like it's definitely important for me to remember that this is just a hobby. I do have my full-time job, which takes up so much time, but I do want to create content where I can. I just don't want to get burnt out. In the same vein as that last goal, my next goal is to be better at planning, creating and uploading my content. I have definitely been overwhelmed these past few months. You guys know I have lost someone very close to me last year. I was also on placement. I started a new job. I did get COVID, and it's all just been a lot. And because of that, I found like I had no real structure when it came to my videos. My goal is always to create the best content for you guys, and I feel like it's come to the point now where I do need to plan everything. So I need to plan the days that I'm going going to film videos, what to talk about briefly in those videos, what days I should edit them, and what days I should aim to upload them. Again, if I feel like this is getting way too overwhelming for me, I will stop doing that, but honestly I feel like it's going to be the opposite. I feel like if I have some sort of structure to it, if I have some sort of timetable that I can follow when it comes to creating content, that will definitely be less of a burden for me, and I think it would really help me to keep focused on booktube as well. My next goal is to focus more on Patreon. If you guys don't know, I do have a Patreon page, and that is a place where you can get extra content from me, such as weekly live reading sprints, a Discord server where we can chat, an exclusive Patreon book club, early access to my videos, and a whole lot more. But towards the end of last year I did get a bit lax with that. I feel like, again, because I had so much going on, I was finding it very overwhelming to keep on top of things. However, I do want to start prioritizing my Patreon, because obviously people over at Patreon do pay for that service and they are supporting me by doing so. Therefore, I do want to give people their money's worth and give them the best out of my Patreon. I have already started with this goal. I am starting to plan things out. Weekly reading sprints on my Patreon are going to be happening every Tuesday night, which is going to be so lovely, and I'm so excited. And again, knowing that I have these weekly sprints happening every Tuesday is definitely going to keep me to that. It's going to keep me more focused, and I know that I can't do anything else because I have something going on. So essentially I do just want to be a whole lot more active on Patreon. I want to do more exclusive content on there, and I do want to offer some more benefits as well. Speaking of reading sprints, my next goal is to host more reading sprints on my YouTube channel. Once again, I've already done this. I did host some impromptu reading sprints last night, which went so well, and I forget how good I feel when I'm doing sprints. I love chatting to all of you guys. It's a much more personal thing because obviously we get to chat to each other in real time. You see me on a deeper, more real level, and that is honestly what booktube means to me. I joined this community to be able to chat to like-minded people who love books, and so to be able to do that in real time with a bunch of you guys is just the most amazing thing. So I definitely want to try and do more of them. Whether they will be weekly, I'm not too sure yet. I don't want to overcommit to things, but they will be happening more regularly on my channel again, and I honestly cannot wait. My next goal is to try and finish out as many series as I can. I am so bad, you guys, at starting the first book in a series and never carrying on. I have so many series that I've started and not finished, and I feel like this year I do want to prioritize those. That's not to say that every single book I'm going to be reading is part of a series, definitely not, but I feel like there are some series that by this point I might not enjoy as much as I would have last year or the year before. So honestly, I just want to read them to see if I still want to keep them, and obviously to see if I will enjoy them or not. Again, this isn't going to be anything that I'm going to be policing myself on. I do have a series tracker in my bullet journal, so I will have a good way of keeping track of the series that I'm currently in the middle of, and I'm so determined to actually finish out some series this year, so I feel like that is a goal that I definitely need to smash. And then my last goal is to read some more of my subscription box books. I cannot tell you guys how many subscription box books that I own and still haven't read. It is an embarrassing number, and I always tell myself when I get these books in the boxes that I'll join the read-alongs for them when they happen, but I always miss them, and so the books get put off. I'm thinking about doing dedicated weekly reading logs for these subscription box books, which will definitely be inspired by Jade from JD Ray Reads. She's definitely done a week of reading Fairy Loot books vlog that I really enjoyed, and I feel like that will get me to read these books and see whether I enjoy them or not. Don't get me wrong, I have read some books from these subscription boxes and really enjoyed them. However, there is a substantial amount that I haven't read and really need to prioritize, especially because a lot of these do have sequels that are coming out as well. So I want to know whether I should buy the next book or not, depending on whether I enjoy the story. But I definitely think it's important to try and prioritize these books, especially because I do spend so much money on these book boxes, and I do want to get my money's worth and see if I enjoy the stories. Right, that is it, you guys. I feel like I've been talking for so long. I'm not sure how much of a mess this video is going to be. Hopefully it's not too bad. Again, I'm sorry that I had to change battery and that the lighting has probably changed, but there's nothing much I can do about that, unfortunately. If you've made it this far into the video, please do leave me some red emojis down in the comments. I feel like Hamnet is the prettiest book that I showed you today, and as you can see, it is a stunning red colour. As well as that, please do let me know what your goals are for 2022. I would love to know, and if you do have a goals video on your channel, please do link it as well. Watch it down in the comments. Please don't forget to click the like button if you like this video, and the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. It truly does mean the world to me, and I will see you soon in my next video. Goodbye!